Please welcome Ms. Annete Francis, our panelist today.
Question to you, Annette, and because you are also resource mobilizer, that's what I understood. So, and you, there's a term which is very popular now, collective impact, which talks about partnership between government, donors, and CSO partners. So, as we would like to create that collective impact, what two interventions can bring together all these three major players? What do you think those are that can bring all the people together so that we can actually impact or shift the needle or make some change in the system?
It's a big question. The first thing I'll point out is that if you look at our skill development model that has been designed by MSCC and everyone collectively, is theoretically speaking a very sound model to actually facilitate collaboration, because the model really requires a training provider to be at the heart of the project, where the training provider is the certifying authority or is at least a skill provider. And then you have industry playing the role of the employer, and then you have government playing the role of the certification authority in some sense. The challenge, I believe, is that when skill development gets implemented, it doesn't get implemented in that full sense of looking at the end-to-end outcome. So if you look at the qualification frameworks that have been defined on paper, they are actually designed to align with industry requirements. And a lot of skill development organizations, good skill development organizations, as they implement those training qualifications, they implement it in a manner that serves the need of the industry. The problem is if you don't implement it according to the way it's been designed, and how do you bring that accountability into the picture is a key factor. So one of the things that I think we are seeing now happening a lot more actively is when CSR is funding skill development, it brings in a lot more accountability into the picture, because the CSR partner is playing. So industry is actually coming into the picture in two capacities. They're coming in as the role of the funder when they're giving their CSR funds. They're also playing the role of the employer when they're recruiting people who are exiting the training mechanism. And these may not be the same partners, right? Like you might have a bank whose CSR fund is going towards the training center, and then you might have manufacturing companies who are hiring the people who are graduating from these training centers. So I think this is one of the interventions which I feel actually creates space for people to play the roles which they are actually most suited to play without anyone having to sort of go and do someone else's part. This is actually playing into our strength. The second element to this that I will call out is interventions which rely on, say, government schemes. So when I talk, I'll take the example of things like DOCW or the Vishwakarma scheme or PM Swanidhi scheme. These are all schemes that are designed to allow people to access capital in different forms, provided they meet the criteria associated with the scheme. And that is where government, I think, plays a really strong role, because in today we have seen that, again, over 50% of our workforce is self-employed. People are, more often than not, whether out of need or of aspirations, they have to move towards self-employment. And the biggest roadblock when it comes to self-employment, apart from the formalization related challenges, is access to capital. And we have seen that whether it's NBFCs, microfinances, they've all tried their best to give access to capital, but it is still difficult for rural India to be able to access capital through these mechanisms. So government in its role, where it is offering these linkage schemes, is a very critical element towards ensuring young people get access to capital. So I think that's the second line of activity that I would call out, where again, here you have like say something like the PM Swanidhi scheme, which is designed specifically for street food vendors to be able to access capital, ensures that government is playing its role to support young people access the capital, and then they're implementing it. And again, CSR is coming in the role, the industry coming in the role as CSR ensures that this has accountability, it is time bound, and it's happening within those time periods. As a training provider, sometimes it's difficult to stick to those timelines, but I think without the accountability metrics of CSR, it's much more difficult to ensure something like this is achievable. So based on at least our experience, these are probably two examples.
Thank you so much. So Annette, you work with a CSO, which is working on learning outcomes, which is working on creating a very niche area for, you can say, inclusive education, girl child, disability. So I would like to ask the same question to you. What could be the 2 intervention areas which targeted, which you would think will support equitable quality education?
No, thank you so much for that question. Broadly, there are 2 ends of the spectrum into which I would suggest we look at. First is when we talk about children, I agree with the point which Mr. Rao also pointed out, that unless we have adequate learning levels when children are leaving the school system, what you do at the latest years does not really translate into results. So ensuring that our school system is able to completely figure out its foundation literacy numeracy requirements is the number 1 task, I would say. There is a very famous line, I believe, in the NEP itself, which says that unless we are able to solve the problem of FLN in our country, everything else that the NEP outlines is not really relevant. So the FLN is the very first phase that we need to figure out. So I think that's definitely there on one side. On the other side, with youth and adults, as an organization, we are a firm believer that we are not training people with all the skills that they will ever need in their life for being able to work. We are training them to be trained further by the industry. And so by that, what I mean is we need to have skill development institutions and higher education institutions that are preparing young people for a workforce where they are going to have to pick up new skills every year, and they need to be comfortable with that. Unfortunately, a lot of the conditioning and messaging that we have done in previous years is that if you complete ABC by so-and-so grade, or if you get this degree, then you don't need to study further, you just need to continue working. That is no longer true in today's day and age. You just have to have the mindset to be prepared to study further. And the best example, which I think we've all seen live in front of us, is the phenomenon of what we call an Uber or an Ola driver today. Maybe 10-15 years ago, to qualify as a driver, you just needed to be able to drive a vehicle. Today, you also have to be able to look at Google Maps to navigate directions while driving the vehicle. Now, this is not a skill that we could have predicted will be necessary for someone to be a driver in 2025. And at the same time, this is not a skill for which people have gone to training programs or university to learn. It's something you learn on the job.